Hello friends, welcome to Salesforce CRMatics video session 129. So basically in today's video, we will actually understand some of the limitations which are there on the data layer which you have to keep in mind, okay? I will not jot it down myself. There is already a Salesforce document. What I will do is I will just walk you through that. And as per the summer 25 release, whatever limitation is existing currently on the data layer, that is something which we will walk through, okay? So what you are going to do is in the Google, what you will search is we will search something like CRM analytics, okay, or you can search something like Salesforce CRM analytics limit. Okay, you have to just search Salesforce CRM analytics limits. Now that first thing which you open which you see, that is CRM analytics limits, just open that document. Fine, this is definitely a Salesforce document and we will understand what are the limits, and maybe I will just explain you one or two steps. Okay, as I already have this open with me. So firstly, in the CRMatics limit, as per like till, I mean not as per till this summer 25, whatever is there, we will just walk through it. So maximum concurrent CRMatics API calls per hour. So per call, concurrent means simultaneously the number of API calls which you can do is 100. Maximum CRMatics API call per user per hour, it is 10,000. Okay, that's fine, not an issue. Now the data set which we create, right, in Salesforce, your total for all registered data comment depends on a license. So depending upon the license combination, it might vary, but each license allocates a different number of rows. For example, currently which we are using is CRMatics Plus, right? So for example, here if I go to this profile, and if I go to my user, this is something which we already walked through, like how we check the profiles and permission set. Okay, so the permissions which I have is CRMatics Plus admin. Now, or rather, the permissions that license which you have at CRMatics Analytics Plus. Okay, so for CRMatics Plus, there will be allocated rows that is 10 billion. So 10 billion records you can see via the CRMatics Plus. Now, if you go for the CRMatics growth, you will be able to see 100 million allocated rows. Okay, and similarly if you have others, that's how it basically comes up. Okay, so that's the thing. So your total storage limit is a combination of active licenses. For example, because the 70% license includes the sales, analytics and service, your total allocation remains 10 billion. So basically in CMAtics Plus, you already have the sales and service as well, right? So therefore it will remain 10 billion. Similarly, the CMAtics growth license includes the sales, service and license, so your total allocation remains 100. However, if you opt in another sales or license, your row limit increases by. So basically separately, for example, you have CMAtics Plus license. Okay, so it will give you 10 billion rows, but inside CMAtics Plus, you already have this to include it, sales analytics and service analytics, which is providing this many rows, but the total will still be 10 billion. But if you additionally purchase sales analytics, okay, extra, then you can get 25 million extra. That's what they are saying. We can just read through that. That is very simple stuff which they have said, okay, in this document. Dataset row limits. Each dataset supports up to 2 billion. If your org has less than 2 billion, each dataset supports up to your org's allocated row. So maximum number of fields. So what are the maximum number of columns, basically the fields which you have, right? We can have 5,000, okay, and it can include up to 1,000 date fields. So this is the maximum number of fields which you can have in a data set. Okay, maximum number of decimal places for each value in numeric field. So the total number of maximum decimal places which you can have, like after point, the number of zeros or ones after the decimal point is 17 decimal places. Okay, when a value exceeds the maximum number of decimal, it overflows. Both this one and this overflow because they use more than 70 decimal. A number also overflow is greater than the maximum. So it's talking about the overflow. When a number overflows, the resulting behavior is unpredictable. Sometimes CRM throws an error. Sometimes it is numerically with a number. So that is fine. Usually this is something I've seen where, let's say if the number is something like somewhere around 0 to 1, okay, so on the dashboard sometimes that exponential format is denoted as mu. Okay, we will walk through that once we come to the dashboard perspective maybe, but which is fine. So yeah, this is something which you have to keep in mind. Maximum value for each numeric field including decimal places, this is the maximum value which you can have for each numeric field. Okay, so for example, if 3 decimal places, the maximum value is still this one. So even if 3 decimal places are used after this, the maximum value is still this one. This is the maximum value which you can have. Okay, the maximum number. Right? Minimum value for each. So this is the minimum value which you can have in terms of negative decimal places. Maximum number of characters. So basically, in a particular field, what are the total number of characters which you can have? For example, you are providing a text field. So in the text field, the number of characters which you can have is 32,000. Okay. Data sync limits. If you extract more than 100 objects, contact Salesforce. So basically, before you enable data. So if there are more than 100 objects, you can contact the Salesforce customer support, which is fine. Okay. But ideally, maximum number of objects that can be enabled for data sync, including local and remote, that is 100. The maximum number of objects that you can enable. Okay. Now the data sync. So simultaneously, how much data sync you can run? You can run maximum of 3 simultaneously. Okay, the sync which we run, right? For example, I mean, if I quickly go to my Analytics Studio, so you remember like we used to run this sync, okay? Like for example, account, opportunity, context. So the maximum which you can run concurrently, okay, like simultaneously, that will be 3. Maximum amount of time each thing run 24 hours. Okay, that's the maximum amount of each document can run for local objects. Maximum amount of each document can run for remote objects. So something which you're pulling from other org, let's say, can be for 12 hours. Data sync limit for each job. So they have mentioned some of the data sync limit for each of the job for each of these connectors. Okay, you can read this out. That is fine. I'm not going through this in details. When using a Salesforce governance cloud, org is productly in transit with advanced encryption. Okay, which is fine. When using a Salesforce local input connection, CMAtrix bulk API usage doesn't count towards Salesforce bulk API limits. Use of Salesforce external connection, output connection impacts your limits. The data for submits, that's fine. This is related to bulk. Okay, which is fine. You can just read it out. So recipe and data frame. The recipe runs over 2 minutes are counted against the limit. Previously, recipe counts wherein correct. That is fine. They have made some correction. So we will understand the recipe and data flow in maximum amount of time each recipe or data flow can run. So it is the 48 hours. 48 hours is the maximum amount of time each data flow recipe can run. Maximum number of recipe which you can use, that is 1000. Okay. Maximum number of data flow. So basically, here, for example, I have so many data flows, right? So I have created so many data flows you must have seen. So I could have created up till 100. So like just like we have free session 1, free session 2, I could have created up till free session 100. That's the total number of data flows I can create. That's what they have said. And when it comes to recipe, I can create till free session 1000 recipes. Okay, so that's the maximum number of recipes which you can create. Fine, that's something which is mentioned over here. Maximum number data flow and recipe runs in a rolling 24-hour period 60. So data flow and recipe runs that takes less than 2 minutes don't count towards this 24. So any recipe which runs less than 2 minutes, that will not count over this time period. Okay, however, if you reach the 24 minutes, you can't run the data flow recipe or data center regardless of size. .csv upload don't count towards this limit. You can use Salesforce data pipeline to increase your recipe limit, not data flow. So that's the thing, and we can just read out this document. Okay, that's fine. So maximum number of data flow runs in a rolling 24 hours period. And 24 hours period, this is the maximum number of data flow and recipe you can run. Here, if some recipe is taking 2 minutes, that is not counted. Okay, that number won't be counted. For example, in a 24 hours flow, you can run maximum 60 data flow and recipe. But let's say one of the recipe, for example, I remember one of the recipe like free session 16. Let's say it's not a recipe I'm saying. So free session 22, it just took less than 2 minutes. So that won't be counted in that. Okay, that's the number they are giving. Okay. Maximum number of concurrent discipline to allow. So concurrent means simultaneous. Simultaneously, you can have 3 recipes which you can run together. Admin can select another concurrency limit sharing between data flow and recipe and analytics settings for a production or okay. So that's the thing. This is some settings which you can actually do that in production, which is trying to allow this 3 maximum recipe running concurrently. Maximum concurrent data flow runs 2 for production org with the analytics plus platform license. So basically, with this platform, you can run 2 orgs simultaneously. One for a sandbox for production with analytics, both platform. So there are some additional licenses which you can have, and you can run the concurrent data flows as well. Maximum dependent jobs for event-based schedule. So basically, I will come to this event-based schedule maybe. Okay, in probably the next session I will teach you once what is this event based schedule all about. But for now, just remember that jobs which you can have for a event based schedule, the maximum dependent job, that is 5. Okay, maximum number of data prep previews per hour. So the data prep preview, the previews which you see right per hour per user, that is 4000, which is fine. Timeout for data load jobs. So data load jobs that have been scheduled but not executed. So what is the timeout? For example, you have ran all the particular you have scheduled all the sync, or you are running all the sync and recipes, but let's say some is already in queue. Okay, so what is the limit up till which it will remain in queue, and after which it won't be in queue anymore, it won't be executed? That is 5 minutes. That's what they are saying. And maximum length of data flow definition file, you can have this many characters, which is fine. Trending, maximum number of rows per snapshot, that is fine. We can avoid this as of now. External data limits, maximum file size for external data uploads, this is the maximum file size which you can have. Maximum file size for all external, that is mentioned over here. Maximum number of characters in a field, 32,000. Maximum number of fields in a record, you can have 5,000, and up in that 5,000 you can have 1,000 date fields, which is fine. So that's the thing. Output connector. So just like we established that output connector, right? I think we already walked through that session of output connector. So that is the thing. Maximum data returned to Salesforce. These are the limit which you can like check over here. Maximum data returned to Azure Data Lake, maximum for each of that particular output connector which you have. Okay, these are the basically output connector limits which you have, like how many data can be transferred to that org. Okay, that is the thing to limit for Snowflake. This is completely fine. Story creation and prediction limits, we will not walk through that. Service analytics and service app limits. So if you are using this app, okay, what is the limits? Salesforce Analytics developer, maximum number of data rows, maximum number of concurrent queries, which is fine. Lens and dashboard limits. We will walk through these lens and dashboard limits at a later stage, which is fine. I won't walk through this right now. Analytics dashboard limits, I won't walk through this right now. Once we cover the designer layer, the dashboard part, then we'll come to this once again. Okay, for now, I won't walk through this. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Okay, and the query timeout, like when you are particularly analyzing one query, when you're opening a data set, what is that query timeout? That is 2 minutes. Maximum number of rows returned per query. So when you open a data set, right, for a particular query, how many number of rows one can return? Up to 5,000. Okay, so in that group by you can have up to 5,000 number of rows. Okay, so that's the thing about this. So mainly, since this topic is related to the data layer limits, so the main thing to keep in mind, okay, is with each of the license, what is the allocated number of rows you can get, fine, and then maximum number of fields in a data set. We already walked through a little bit on data set side, which is fine. Like whenever I used to create a development recipe, where I used to check it on the data set. Okay, so the data set you can know like what are the maximum number of fields you can have in a data set. Okay, and the decimal places you can know it, like sometimes is important number of concurrent data sync limits which you can have, fine, that is something which you can note down over here. Okay, as well as on the data flow recipe, this is something very important, like the maximum number of recipes which you can create. I don't think so there will be a situation where it will cross 1,000. Honestly, it has to be always less than 1,000, but still you can keep that in mind so that eventually you can create a recipe and decide, okay, how much time it will require to run that recipe, what are the dependencies which I have. Okay, and data flow is 100. Data flow, of course, for now you can avoid, because as honestly we are going towards the recipe section much more in future, but you can still keep that in mind. There is one or two scenarios where the data flow is actually helpful, which is fine. Okay, and number of data from recipes you can run in a 24-hour period. So yeah, all these things you have to keep in mind, fine. And the external data limit, output connector limits. Okay, so basically when you are establishing an output connection, okay, and there's an expectation from the client like how many data that can be exported, that is something you have to keep in mind. You have to tell them, okay, these are the number of records which can be imported from, I mean transferred from Salesforce to that external output connector. So before establishing any output connection limit, like of course I have done it in my case, right? So you remember we have established the output connection where I have transferred data from Salesforce to some other external client. Like I had this particular Salesforce developer recipe where we transfer data. We already walked through that. Now before doing that, we have to ensure this limits as well. Okay, because when you are working real-time scenarios, when the data is huge, when you're working on a client where the data will be massive, okay, there you have to ensure that you particularly tell your clients what is that limits which you can have when you're transferring from this, depending upon the license which they have. Okay, and yeah, that's the thing. And of course, for all these things, you can always contact the Salesforce support, which is fine. You can always raise a ticket. And yeah, regarding this one, we will walk through. Yeah, we will walk through later on this lens and dashboard limit. As of now, that is not required. Okay, so yeah, that's the main thing, the data layer limits. I hope you got this one. I hope you can keep this in mind. And of course, this is already a particular document available, so I'm not totally down from my end. And yeah, just remember like the overflow limit, how that overflow concept happens. You just need to read through this once and you will get much more idea. So yeah, that's it about this video. I just wanted to keep it a very simple one. And yeah, we can meet very soon in our next video. Thank you. Bye bye.